Good morning, everyone, and very much welcome to the last day already of Amsterdam FinTech Week. But we shouldn't be sad because we've got a great day ahead with, I think, very relevant topics, great speakers, great lineup of organizers of today, and of course, the great ending with the Meetup XL in the afternoon. Today, we're going to talk especially about society's perspective for FinTech. So we see that over the past years that society has basically changed the way that they feel that financial services should operate. It's not really new, but you see that there's a stronger pressure on actually being more social, looking after the environment. And I think the ethical debate has also been sparking much more around the way that technology and financial services collaborate and how you basically see that that has an effect on people, potentially related to privacy, security issues, of course, and how we actually help everyone stay connected to the financial ecosystem to be able to make use of financial services and to enjoy a well-being, basically, based on their financial situation. And so I think from that perspective, we really think it's really important that we have that discussion also with the industry, that we together figure out, what is society expecting from us? What is our own drive to make things better? Where does that bring people, and how does that resonate with what society is expecting at this moment? A couple of topics that we picked out, especially today, that we want to talk about are the ethical side of things, right? So what should we be doing from a moral perspective? Looking at sustainability, which is becoming ever more important, especially also given the recent Shell verdict, for example, about how even a company like Shell should completely overhaul itself to become sustainable, create a sustainable future from an environmental perspective. And one topic I think that's really key, because I think that's where the Dutch market has quite a good capabilities, is to fight financial crime. And I think that those perspectives we really want to make sure they're on the agenda today. And we've got some great speakers for you lined up to have the discussion and facilitate that on how we can collaborate and discuss these topics. Of course, I won't be by myself here this morning. We've got a great speaker coming up. But first of all, I'd like to introduce André Moen. André, good morning.
Hello, good morning, Don. Thank you. Nice to be here.
André is CEO and founder of Intersolve, which is an electronic money licensed institute, which means that they're actually powering a lot of fintech companies and others to actually make their way into the financial services ecosystem. So they're a great force, I think, in the industry. And besides that, André is also part of the board of Holland FinTech. And so we're really glad that you could make it here this morning, André.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, it was also nice to be part of the board. We just started a couple of months ago, and I always thought that it's good to share knowledge with the other board members in the industry. And it's a rapid changing environment, of course, and good to share this knowledge. And I also realized it was quite fun in the very first board meeting we had. Someone mentioned the word level playing field, and suddenly everyone got excited. So apparently, in all the sub-industries within FinTech, that was an important topic, and I immediately did not feel alone anymore with this. But it's good that we strengthen our knowledge, and it's really inspiring to work with this team. And that's,
thanks.
That's
I think it's great how the board has picked up and is now working together to set the agenda for the work at Holland FinTech, but also is supportive of the Amsterdam FinTech Week, for example, like we see now, as we've been able to present one of the board members as a carrier for the subject each day. And I think for you, André, what we're going to talk about today, how does that resonate with your background?
Yeah, well, today there are quite lots of topics that's also relevant for us, of course, being a regulated company. And we're going to talk about the KYC, the improvement, all the procedures about fraud and stuff like that. And also within Intersolve, you must imagine the first 10 years of our existence, we were not regulated. And then you're a pure technology provider. So what you do then as an issue of gift cards, for example, you just do everything you want to do to prevent fraud, and you do this risk-based. So if you see you set up secure technology, you generate reporting, you set up monitoring tools, but also the investment you do in fraud prevention is what you balance with the cost of the fraud itself. If fraud is 10K a year, then you don't invest 100K to prevent it, except for reputation damage. So it's an acceptable risk. But that's before you're regulated. Once you are regulated, there's a whole different dimension, different gameplay. Then in fact there is no acceptable risk. I feel it's like a zero tolerance approach. That means there's enormous rising of cost to fight against fraud, cost of compliance and overhead is increasing. Also every year it's becoming a bit more strict.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel that okay, you have to do this because it's a law, so there's no question about it. But sometimes I feel you do it because it's a law, but does it sometimes really help? And is it still balanced with the cost of fraud? Yeah,
but is it also changing on that? I think we really came from a tick the box environment, I think. But do you see now that is becoming more also an intrinsic motivation, right? So because you see that the expectations keep on rising, basically.
Yeah, but I still have the feeling that it's still a lot about tick the box, and of course it becomes more intelligent. And I hope we will work together to make it more intelligent. But I feel with a regulated entity, if it's a lot of tick the box steps, and that's a pity, because of course you have to tick the box sometimes, but you also have to look realistic what is working. And that's also because there are sometimes blank spots in the regulations, in the law, because law is always behind the technology. So when you launch a new service, you spend a lot of time, is it e-money, a payment, and is it regulated or not? And then you know where it has to fit in. And then sometimes for certain products you see, okay, this is logical, but sometimes it's not logical to do, because for the end user, certain products are quite similar, non-regulated and regulated. And in the end, it's what you want is trust in the system. So we all have to do this. But I still feel too much times that it's tick of the box. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure this will change. It has to change.
Yeah. I think, but you also, I think you touched upon a really relevant topic there, and that's also that when we talk about level playing field, we very often talk about sort of within the industry. But actually, if you tie that into customer expectation, it's actually about that customers should be able to expect the same things from the same kind of services from their perspective, right? So they should not have to figure out, hey, what kind of license does this person have, or does this organization have? They should really understand that by default, that things are taken care of properly, and that they indeed can trust the system as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, the trust in the system that is key, of course, and that's what we all want. But you see that the level playing field is important. You see the implementation of the law differs per country, and because of the passporting, you can get a license in country A and passport to B. Then you have different rules sometimes, and that's annoying. I don't mind to have very strict rules as long as it is everyone has to play by the same set of rules. And also it's difficult to explain to customers why. But yesterday was Ginsel van Beuzenkom from AFM in the introduction. I think he said that there were initiatives at European level to improve and align this. Well, I just can't wait, because I think that's important for all parties, and still stay relevant to make sure that people don't move to other more relaxed regime countries. That's what you want to avoid.
No. I think that's a fair point, and I think that's especially also if you look at the customer expectation, right? So they should understand that the parties that they get to work with similar kinds of services are being looked after in the same way. So that expectation, I think, makes a large impact, and you want it to basically, ideally, of course, if you bring a solution forward, you would want it ideally to work in the European market, not just in a country by country market.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Yeah, and so I do understand your drive for further harmonization across Europe, and I think that's a very good point. And so, how do you see that now, for example, also because I think you could also benefit from the fact that you are regulated already, and you support other companies that are not regulated, right? With issuance, how does that go? Do you also see that, for example, you have to be like an agent of the system, actually also increase your requirements towards the clients you work for? How does that work?
Yeah, well, being regulated, for if you're fintech clients, then they're quite pleased that you are regulated because it helps them, and in the end, it's also you become more professional. But like in the crowdfunding market, we also have parties that are not regulated, or regulated more by AFM. But And you see there are differences between the AFM and the DNB in aspects of crowdfund. And sometimes it's a bit difficult for other parties to understand why we are so strict to them. Well, especially startups have problems with this, but that's maybe a learning process. But by being regulated, of course, we also provide trust, and that's very important. But many times we have to say, yes, this is the law. We have no choice, and that's a bit of a pity. But at the same time, we all know that you need to improve. You need to improve your KYC process. That's fact of life, But also what I get, for example, is when we work on the KYC process, the customer says, yes, but I've done this already with my payment service provider, with my bank. Can't you rely on them? And said, no, we have, because we are regulated, we have our own responsibility. That means we have to do exactly the same thing. You have to go on board with us. And I just wonder, can't we do that a bit? Can we not make that more work together? Because we have 90% of the questions we ask to clients, validate bank accounts, also funds, verify UBO information, background checks, is done by many fintech parties. And is there a way to work together? That maybe there's a central storage of these documents.
That's a really good point. It's a really good point on that, because I think actually that's also what we aim to achieve by putting it on the agenda today, that we can actually spark people's imagination to think about how we can further collaborate in this and actually try to solve this smarter. Because indeed, there's a lot of administrative hassle that does not necessarily add value when it gets done distributed across all different regulated entities. That's why I also think that, for example, Transaction Monitoring NL, this new entity that looks after centralized KYC and transaction monitoring, I think it's a really interesting initiative to see where that's going to bring, and if that's going to help the industry to be both more efficient and basically being more fierce on actually tackling crime. But maybe it would be good at this point to actually bring out Steven Maijoor, who's our distinguished main speaker of the morning. Steven has been before the president of the ESMA and is currently a member of the governing board of the Dutch Central Bank. Good morning, Steven. We don't have visual just yet. I hope that we're able to hear you. We've had some technical difficulties, but well, we'll wait a little bit for Steven to come in, but I'm really curious to learn a bit more about how currently the Dutch Central Bank is looking at the whole at their role in the regulatory field, as well as the takes on the ethical discussion and how they want to be involved there. I know that they've got some nice initiatives working on that level to work with the market to look at new regulations, as well as looking at, for example, topics like financial crime and AML, where they of course also play an important role.
Also about financial crime, I was just wondering if we can also better work together with that one. We all do the FIU reporting, but it's also a bit scattered. I have the feeling that PSP has to do this. We have to do this as an issue of money, and maybe other parties. There is also a way to make the process more smooth, because you can expect more financial crime with more digital products. And is that also a way to do that more centralized?
Yeah, no, I think that would be so. And I think that's one of the interesting parts as well. That if you would actually, with the current technology stack and the knowledge that we currently have, you would not, you would not make the system work like it currently does. You would actually turn it completely around, and you would just say, okay, we want to get all your transactions, not just the ones you think we should look at, but let's send all the transactions to the FIU and make sure that we, extend the knowledge there to run the right algorithms to find the right connections, also, especially also between different entities, because criminals will probably make good use of the fact that monitoring takes place across different entities, so they will probably play around by that by actually sort of doing kind of arbitrage there. And that's ideally where you would want to get like a centralized view on everything that's going on across different regulated entities.
Yeah, right.
And could potentially also be much cheaper, I would guess, right? So that's probably going to save armies of people in compliance.
True. I think Steven has, at least the security is very high at DNB at the moment.
No, that's indeed from that perspective. We're not allowed to corrupt Steven here with any kind of information. No, it's quite tough sometimes to actually get in. Some systems have really strong blocking parts. So we'll just see if we can make it still in, but maybe we can look at the agenda of today then together, André, in any case, to have a look at what's coming up today. And because I'm really curious to see, it's really cool to see. I think that there's so many people that are able to basically to get together about this subject. And I see especially the interest in financial crime. I know that we've got a nice session by Sentinels, for example, which is an AI-based company for fraud detection, which I think is really interesting. For the rest, I think we also have a session together with ACFCS, which is the Association for Certified Financial Crime Fighters, which is going to be a nice one. Oh yeah, that's around lunchtime. Here we can go to it a bit more structured. So Sentinels is, as said, is picking up first after the panel discussion that we will go on to any moment. Then we've got a session by Onfido, which basically looks at generating trust at scale, which I think is also really interesting. They look at the identity verification solutions that we have and how they play an important role in actually being able to do trusted business online. Breaking through the silos of financial crime, I think, is really looking after the call that we were into, that we just made, André, on how we could further collaborate. We've got some really nice speakers there from the FIU, from ING, and from people, let's say, some experts in the industry that together basically will explore what the options are that we have at that moment. So I think that's really interesting. For the rest, we look at WebIQ, which is actually a company that's very highly equipped to track financial crime. So I think they will share some really interesting intelligence about how customer screening actually works and what the pitfalls are. Then actually focusing a bit more on the inclusive side, we have a session on how we could actually design fintech for women. I think this is definitely also an interesting topic, as we see that the majority of people in the financial industry, and also especially in fintech, are male, and you see that actually drives a bias also towards the kind of solutions that are being built, and so exploring what's actually what we should do actually to make sure that all these solutions that we have are also just as well available, or maybe even better available for women. I think is a really interesting topic to discuss there. And we talked with EWPN, which is the European Women in Payments Network. Then we've got a cool session with UiPath. They are really good at robotic process automation, and definitely also look at financial crime management using their intelligent automation platform. And then we wrap up with the meetup of today. I must say that I just was told that it's not going to work to have Steven speak with us today, or at least not in the morning, because the systems keep on failing. So that's a shame. But I think that we'll be able to bring him in at another moment today to still be able to give his talk. And I'm looking forward to that, because I think that he has some nice words to share and some visions that I think are relevant for the industry to keep aligned on. André, any thoughts on your end? What are you looking forward to in the program today?
Well, I'm interested in the trust at scale, because trust is, the fintech industry, if you put your money there and if they do the payments, then trust is key. In fact, I will say we supply trust and not financial solutions. So I'm interested in that one, but there are lots of items interesting. The silos of financial crime, well, that was the discussion we just had. The customer screening, how to make it user friendly. It's a must have, but how can you make it really customer friendly? And the crime management, it's almost a whole agenda. It's but I think it will be an interesting day. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks in any case for joining, André, and sharing your vision here. Maybe we could just have a look ahead at the panel today, because I think that's also quite packed and definitely interesting to follow as well. We've got Natja van der Veer, who will be hosting that. She's a payment lawyer and really well fed into the payment regulations, and she's besides that also very good at moderating the session. So I'm looking forward to that. We've got some great speakers there from OnFido, UiPath, Direct ID, WebIQ, SAS, and Alan Overy. So it's really a full panel. But these people all have, I think, a really interesting view on where the industry is heading, and from that perspective, I'm really keen to learn from them how they look at financial crime, the ethical part, as well as ESG perspective for financial services. I think they're going to start probably in a couple of minutes. And so I have a last question for you, André. So I know that you work with quite some startups as well, as you mentioned. What kind of cases do you see now mostly coming up there? And so what kind of business cases do you see mostly popping up that you play a role in?
It's still it's more like a semi-open loop payment solutions. So payments which are not entirely closed loop, so they are to be regulated. Also be more digitized. And we also see that there is more about crowdfunding. There's also more demand, and also like gift card related crowdfunding, building gifts, collecting money for different people as a gift to a person. And so we're using our e-wallet solutions for this. And that's more or less the market at the moment. And there were a lot more different types of parties involved, but also if the PSD2 license, lots of them can handle it with that license only, and then you don't need a full-fledged e-money license.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's then the biggest difference. But so basically, anyone who wants to hold money for a certain period could benefit from your e-money license, right? So that's basically the key there.
Like a virtual bank account, but in digital, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're in money flow yourself. So we take care of all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, if you look at the companies you work with, right? So, what would be your if you see startup companies coming up and basically wanted to work with you, what is sort of the biggest gap of knowledge that they still need to fill? For example, to understand how they like we were just talking about to deal with you being regulated and therefore also having to have putting on conditions on their end. What's the biggest lesson still to be learned there?
Well, you can see that the startups, they're great in building fantastic apps and user interaction and so on. And sometimes when they start, they don't realize they need a license, and they find it out later on. If we then come back with our story, that means that they have to get rid of a certain development they've done themselves, because we need to do certain authorizations, because we have to manage the flow, the values. And then you can see that it is a bit late in the process. So I think if you start something new, do the check as soon as possible if you need to be regulated or not. And the other thing is, if we are regulated, it doesn't mean that they can do everything they want, because we are regulated. So we need to make sure that they also comply. And it doesn't mean that you have total freedom, but we take the burden away. That's more the task. And I think a few years ago, it was totally new for most of them. These days, when we are approached, they have done their pre-study. So it's you can see that the whole market is becoming more up to speed.
Okay. Yeah, I think that maturity in the market, I think, is really beneficial as well. And you see also, therefore, you see less startups, right? So I think that it's less of an open playing field where just anyone can jump in. You see that more people really draw in some experience from the financial industry to be able to actually play along, which makes sense. But sometimes we might actually miss out on some creativity because of that. Thanks in any case, André. I think it was great to have you here, and it's of course really wonderful to have you on the board of Holland FinTech, looking after the interest, as you mentioned as well, the level playing field, and how to actually also look at making regulations more efficient, perhaps from a tech perspective. So thanks for joining.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for the invitation. I look forward to the day.
No, exactly. We all look forward to this great day. So I'm going to be looking at the panel again to weave you off, and much luck for Nadia on the panel to moderate. Very much looking forward to that session, and hope everyone will enjoy their day. Have a great time, and please let us know any feedback that you have along the way, or reach out to us if you want to get in touch with us or any of the speakers that you saw over the past week. Have a great day, and have a great ending of amCET FinTech Week.